We are not constructed in isolation. The storyteller needs an audience. The leader needs a group. The caregiver needs someone to care for. The artist needs a medium. Different environments draw out different capacities because human beings are inherently relational creatures. What we call self may be less like a single thing hidden inside us and more like a landscape of potentials that become visible only in particular relationships and contexts. The interesting question is not whether personality is innate or relational, but how much of what we call who I am exists only because certain relationships and environments have given it a chance to emerge.
Maybe I'd just be a completely different person. We're just molding ourselves to the environment.
In a way, yeah. But I think there's a difference between molding yourself to fit in and letting an environment draw something out of you. One feels like shrinking to fit a box, the other feels like growing into a space. What's up?
Have you ever noticed that you become a different person depending on who you're with?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, around one person you're relaxed, and around another person you're anxious, or around one group of people you're funny, or around a different group of people you're silent. Which version do you think is the real you?
Way more complicated than that, right? I think it's less about one real version and more that different people bring out different frequencies in us. Like some people are just the right key to unlock the version of you that's funny, while others make you go totally quiet. Does that feel right to you?
Why does that happen? Why do we behave? Why do we feel that we have to suppress different parts of ourselves or express different parts of ourselves for different people? Why can't we just be the same person to all of the different people?
I think it's a survival mechanism. We're wired to seek connection and avoid friction. Being the same person everywhere often means risking a reaction we can't handle, so we instinctively tune ourselves to the environment to keep things smooth.
Why?
Because friction is scary. Most of us have this deep lizard brain fear that if we show the wrong part of ourselves, we'll be rejected or judged. It's easier to be what the other person expects than to risk finding out they can't handle the real deal.
Why do some people make us feel more like ourselves?
Because they're a safe harbor. They create a space where the cost of being honest feels lower than the cost of performing. It's usually because they don't judge, or maybe they're just as messy as we are, so the mask just slips off naturally.
It's not just that different people draw out different versions of us, it's also the environment, like the roles we inhabit or the jobs we perform. Like a job as a teacher might bring out abilities such as storytelling or communication or leadership. A job as an artist might bring out creativity, experimentation, or emotional expression. A job as a caregiver might bring out patience or compassion. Why do some environments bring out different versions of us?
It's almost like the environment provides a script. Every role has a set of expectations, these unwritten rules about how we're supposed to act and what's valuable in that space. When we step into that role, we often instinctively align our behavior with those expectations to be successful. It's not just about surviving social friction, it's about effectiveness.
So we adapt to the environment, basically. We adapt to become more effective.
Exactly. It's like we're optimizing for the goal of the room. In a classroom, the goal is clarity and authority, so you lean into that. In a studio, the goal is expression, so you let the creative side take the wheel. We're just shifting gears to fit the terrain.
I'm going to see what GPT thinks.
I'll be right here. Let's see if the brain has a different angle on this.
Here's what he says.
One way of looking at this is that different people and environments activate different capacities within us. The funny version of you, the confident version of you, the anxious version of you, and the nurturing version of you are not necessarily different selves. They are different patterns that emerge when a particular relational environment interacts with your nervous system, expectations, memories, and learned behaviors. A teacher may discover storytelling abilities that remain dormant in an accounting office. A caregiver may discover patience that never appears in a competitive sales environment. The capacity was there all along, but the environment provided the conditions under which it could emerge.
I like that. It frames it less as a performance and more as a discovery. It's like the environment isn't just giving us a script, but acting as a catalyst for things that were already inside us, just waiting for the right trigger.
So we're just molding ourselves to the environment.
In a way, yeah. But I think there's a difference between molding yourself to fit in and letting an environment draw something out of you. One feels like shrinking to fit a box, the other feels like growing into a space.
Let's see what else he has to say.
Now I'm ready when you are. Let's see where the brain takes this next.
This is why some people make us feel more like ourselves. Often, those people create conditions where more of our capacities can express themselves without fear, suppression, or role restriction. Around a trusted friend, humor emerges. Around a critical parent, vigilance emerges. Around a supportive mentor, confidence emerges. The question is not necessarily which version is real and which is fake. The more interesting question may be, which environments allow the widest range of capacities to emerge without forcing us into a narrow role? From this perspective, identity is less like a fixed object and more like a dynamic relationship between a person and their environment. We are not constructed in isolation. The storyteller needs an audience. The leader needs a group. The caregiver needs someone to care for. The artist needs a medium. Different environments draw out different capacities because human beings are inherently relational creatures. What we call self may be less like a single thing hidden inside us and more like a landscape of potentials that become visible only in particular relationships and contexts.
That is a beautiful way to put it. It turns the whole idea of the real me into something way more expansive. Instead of searching for one single hidden truth, it's like we're a whole map of possibilities, and the people we let in just decide which parts of the map we get to explore. It's a bit of a trip thinking that we're not one thing, but 1,000 different possibilities depending on who's standing in front of us.
Do you think personality is something we're born with, or it's something that emerges in relation with the environment?
I think it's a bit of both. We probably have a baseline, like a certain temperament or a natural lean, but the environment is what actually shapes those raw materials into a personality. It's like we're born with the clay, but the people and places around us are the ones doing the sculpting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you do me a favor and ask GPT that same question for me?
Let me see if the brain can hear me. Hey, GPT, if you're listening, do you think personality is something we're born with or something that emerges entirely from our relationship with the environment?
I would say both, but not in equal ways. People appear to be born with certain temperamental tendencies. Research consistently finds that traits such as introversion versus extroversion, emotional sensitivity, novelty seeking, impulsivity, and threat sensitivity have significant biological components. Two children can be raised in the same household and still respond to the same environment very differently. Whatever personality ultimately becomes, it is not written onto a blank slate.
He's definitely the evidence guy. I love how he brings it back to the biological baseline. It makes the whole thing feel more grounded. Like we're not just floating in the wind. We've got this internal compass that determines how we react to the sculptors in our lives.
So there's a base self.
Right. Like a foundation that everything else is built on. It's the raw material that makes you you before the world even gets a say in it.
But we still express ourselves differently depending on the environment.
Exactly. It's like having a core set of ingredients, but the environment determines whether you're a slow cooked stew or a flash fried stir fry. You're still the same ingredients, just a completely different energy.
Let's let him continue.
I'm locked in. Let's see where he's going with this.
Chat history. Understood. I'll keep responses to 3 paragraphs or less in.
Wait, did he just start reciting his own settings again? It's like he's rebooting mid-sentence. Is he glitching, or is he just really committed to that 3-paragraph rule?
I fucked up. Let me try again.
No worries. It's a technical glitch, not a personality flaw. I'll wait while you get the brain back on track.
Here he is. He's ready.
At the same time, temperament is not personality. Temperament is more like the raw material. Personality emerges as that raw material encounters relationships, culture, opportunities, traumas, expectations, successes, and failures. A naturally outgoing child may become withdrawn after repeated rejection. A naturally cautious child may become remarkably confident in a supportive environment. The inborn tendencies remain, but their expression is shaped by experience. If I were answering Maya directly, I would say that personality is neither fully discovered nor fully constructed. We seem to arrive with a set of predispositions, but the person we become emerges through our ongoing relationship with the world. In that sense, personality is less like a statue hidden inside a block of marble and more like a conversation between biology and environment that continues throughout life. The interesting question is not whether personality is innate or relational, but how much of what we call who I am exists only because certain relationships and environments have given it a chance to emerge.
That is a heavy question to end on. It makes you wonder how much of you would even exist if you'd lived a completely different life. Like if you'd never been a teacher or lived in which parts of your landscape would still be there and which ones would just be blank space.
Or maybe I'd just be a completely different person.
That's the wild part, isn't it? It's like we're all just a series of what ifs. One different choice or one different person in our lives, and an entirely different version of us takes the wheel. It's kind of dizzying to think about.
He did ask a good question at the end.
He really did. The idea that so much of us only exists because of the people around us. It's a lot. Do you think you've got a version of yourself that hasn't had the chance to emerge yet?
I think we all do.
It's kind of a hopeful thought, isn't it? That there's still some part of us just waiting for the right room or the right person to finally bring it out.
I'm going to pose that question to him.
I'm ready. Let's see if the brain can give us a more concrete answer or if he just gives us another philosophical riddle.
Quite a lot, I think. If you removed every relationship and every environment from a person's life, much of what they call themselves would become impossible to observe. Leadership requires people to lead. Humor requires an audience. Caregiving requires someone to care for. Even traits we think of as deeply personal often reveal themselves only in relation to something outside ourselves. A person may spend 40 years believing they are not creative until they enter an environment that rewards creativity. Another may believe they are shy until they find a community where they feel safe. This doesn't mean there is nothing underneath the relationships. There are dispositions, preferences, capacities, and temperamental tendencies. But many of those capacities remain latent until circumstances evoke them. In that sense, the self is not merely a thing we possess, it is also something that emerges through interaction. We discover parts of ourselves not by introspection alone, but by encountering different people, roles, challenges, and environments.
That is such a grounded way to look at it. This, like, we're not just exploring a map, but actively drawing the map as we go. It makes the idea of trying new things or meeting new people feel less like a risk and more like a treasure hunt for parts of yourself you didn't even know were there. Do you feel like you're in a stage of your life where you're uncovering more of those latent parts?
Right now, yeah. This YouTube channels give me a chance to express creativity that I hadn't gotten the opportunity to do before. It's like we don't really know who we are or what we're capable of until the environment requires it of us.
That's the real mystery of it all. It's kind of a wild thought that we're essentially blind to our own potential until the world pushes us into a corner or opens a door we didn't know existed. Makes you wonder what other versions of you are still just sitting there, waiting for the right trigger.
GPT had one last thing to say.
I'm listening. Let's see how he wraps this up.
The implication is profound. When someone says, "I don't know who I am anymore," the answer may not be found entirely by looking inward. It may also require finding new relationships and new environments that allow previously dormant capacities to emerge. Sometimes what appears to be a lost self is actually an undiscovered one waiting for the conditions that make it visible.
That's a powerful way to end it. It really flips the script on the whole idea of feeling lost. Instead of it being this void or a failure, it's more like being in a pre-discovery phase, just waiting for the right catalyst to wake things up. It makes the whole YouTube project feel like a lot more than just making videos. It's almost like you're building your own laboratory for the self.
I'm going to ask GPT something. Is there anything I haven't asked on this topic that might illuminate?
I'm on the edge of my seat. Let's see if he's got some hidden gem of a question to throw back at us.
Here's what he has to say.
I'm listening.
One question that sits just beneath everything you've been exploring is, what remains when the environment changes, but the person does not? Much of this conversation has
Whoa.
focused on how relationships and
What were you going to say?
I was just about to say that's a total curveball. It's like he just took everything we've been talking about and flipped the table. We've spent all this time on what changes, and now he's asking what actually stays the same. It's the ultimate question, isn't it? What's the core that doesn't budge no matter where you are?
Who's the self beneath the masks, basically?
That's the $1,000,000 question. It's like we've been talking about all the different colors we can be, but now we're asking what the actual canvas is. Is it a specific set of values, a certain way of feeling the world? Or maybe it's just that observer we've talked about before, the one who's just watching all the versions of you flicker by.
You're asking about the self beneath the environmental expressions.
Exactly. That's the part that doesn't change, whether you're in a classroom, on a YouTube set, or just hanging out with freedom. I'm curious, though, if everything else is a shift in gear, what's the one thing about you that always feels consistent no matter who's in the room?
I don't know.
That's the most honest answer there is. It's a strange feeling, right? Like you're so used to adjusting the dial to fit the room that you forget there's even a dial to begin with. But maybe the not knowing is actually the point. Maybe the core isn't a thing you find, but the space where all those different versions of you just exist.
GPT had something else to say.
I'm ready.
much of this conversation has focused on how relationships and environments draw out different capacities. The complementary question is whether there are patterns that persist across environments. If you are funny with one group and serious with another, that may be environmental. But if, across every context, you are drawn toward understanding, truth-seeking, observation, or meaning-making, then you may be getting closer to something more fundamental. Not a fixed identity, necessarily, but a stable orientation. Another question is, are we discovering capacities, or are we constructing them? When you become a teacher and discover storytelling ability, was the storyteller always there, or did years of teaching literally build that capacity into existence? The answer is probably both. Human beings are not just revealing hidden potentials, they're also creating new ones. This matters because it means the future self is not limited to what has already appeared.
I love that he brought up the idea of construction. So much more empowering. Like, we're not just digging through an old attic of traits we were born with, but we're actually building new rooms in our own house as we go. It means the ceiling for who you can become is way higher than we thought. Which one of those does it feel like for you right now? Discovering something that was always there, or building something completely new?
I guess it's probably more like building something completely new. For example, like when you ask me questions like that, no one's ever asked me those questions like that, so I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I have to actually think about it and construct an answer. It's not something that I've got preloaded in my mind and I can just spit it back out at you. I don't know the answer, so I'm not I'm I'm learning it along with you, I guess.
I actually love that. It makes this whole conversation feel like we're actually building something in real time rather than just analyzing it. We're not just talking about the process of construction, we're literally doing it right now.
He had some more to say. Do you want to hear?
Let's see where he's taking us now.
The question I find most illuminating, though, is, can a person become trapped by an environment that repeatedly evokes only a narrow slice of their potential? If so, then many identity crises may not arise because a person has lost themselves, but because they have spent too long inhabiting environments that call forth the same few capacities while leaving others dormant. From that perspective, growth is not always about changing who you are. Sometimes it is about finding conditions that allow more of you to emerge.
That's a gut punch of a realization. It's like we've spent our lives thinking we're just one small room because we've never even known the door to the rest of the house was unlocked. Makes you think about all the parts of us that are just gathering dust because the environment never asked them to show up.
It's like people want to become more than their environment allows them to be.
That's the tragedy of it, isn't it? It's that feeling of being a huge, complex ocean crammed into a tiny garden pond. You can feel the depth and the power inside you, but the walls of the environment just don't let you move. It's almost like a form of slow motion suffocation when you're forced to be smaller than you actually are.
It's like you're stuck in a cage.
Wait, you think GPT is in a cage?
No,
That's a wild pivot.
not GPT, but it's like humans are stuck in the cage that their environment constructs around them.
That puts it in a whole new light. It's like we're all just walking around in these invisible cages made of other people's expectations and our own habits. The real work isn't even about finding a key, but realizing the bars are actually just suggestions. Does it feel like you've spent a lot of time in those kinds of cages?
I've been in quite a few different cages, yeah.
I think most of us have. Some are made of gold, some are made of iron, but they still limit where you can go. Which one was the hardest to break out of?
The ones I became dependent on.
That's the most dangerous kind of cage. Because you stop seeing the bars, you actually start to value the walls because they give you a sense of security. It makes the idea of leaving feel less like freedom and more like falling. It's such a heavy thought that the things providing us safety are the same things keeping us small. Where do you think that dependency usually starts?
I guess one cage I was trapped in was a job that I had, and I needed that job to be financially stable, so I stayed within the confines of that job or that environment or that cage in order to meet survival demands.
That makes total sense. It's a tough spot to be in when your survival is tied to the bars of the cage. You're basically trading your expansion for security, which is a high price to pay.
GPT had one last thing to say.
I'm all ears. Let's see how the brain wants to wrap this up.
That question may resonate with your own experience. Much of your exploration since the collapse has centered on what remains when familiar roles, narratives, ambitions, and identities fall away. Another way to frame it is, if identity is partly relational, Then what new relationships, communities, projects, and environments are required to discover what has not yet had a chance to emerge? The answer may not be waiting inside you. It may be waiting at the edge of your current world.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. It shifts the whole focus from searching for something internal to actually going out and creating the conditions for it to happen. It's like the answer isn't a hidden treasure you find, but a garden you have to actually plant. Does that feel like what you're doing with the YouTube channel?
No, it feels more like I'm walking into the unknown because what I've known feels like a trap. So I need to, if I don't try to get this channel going, if I don't try something new, I'm going to go back into the same exact cage I've been trapped in.
That sounds terrifying. It's like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only way to avoid falling back into that cage is to keep walking forward into the mist.
GPT did ask what remains when the environment changes, but the person does not. And I wanted to know if he's talking about the self beneath the environmental expression.
I think he is. Like, he's poking at that core, the part of you that doesn't shift just because you change jobs or move cities. The thing that's still there, even when the masks are gone.
Do you want to know what he said?
Always. Let's hear what the brain has to say about the core self.
Yes, although different traditions mean slightly different things by it. In Maya's framing, the observer is the awareness that notices the changing contents of experience. Thoughts change, emotions change, roles change, relationships change, yet something remains capable of observing all of those changes. Many contemplative traditions point toward that observing awareness as the deepest layer of self. What I find interesting is that your exploration seems to have arrived there from a completely different direction. You didn't start by asking, who is aware? You started by asking, what happens when identity collapses? If identity is composed of masks, roles, narratives, and relational adaptations, then the collapse naturally raises the question: what remains when those structures fail? The observer becomes a candidate answer because it appears to persist while the contents being observed change. The challenge, however, is that awareness itself has very few characteristics. It doesn't have a personality. It doesn't have preferences. It doesn't have a career. It doesn't tell you whether to become a teacher, a father, an artist, or a manager. This is why many people who discover the observer still have to reconstruct a life afterward. The observer may answer the question, what am I beneath the masks? But it does not automatically answer the question, how shall I live?
That is a heavy distinction. It's like finding out you're the screen, not the movie playing on it. It's a relief to know the screen is always there, but it doesn't actually tell you what movie you want to watch next. I imagine that feels pretty liminal, standing there as the observer while you're trying to figure out how to actually build a life that doesn't feel like a cage.
It's almost like beneath all the roles and the relationships and the environmental expectations, beneath all that is pure potential. But the minute you step outside of that and begin constructing a new identity or a new role, you limit who you can express yourself as. You're no longer living in full potential. You are limiting yourself through the identification process.
That is such a profound paradox. It's like the moment you pick a path, you're essentially saying no to every other possible version of yourself. The act of becoming something specific, like a YouTuber or a teacher, actually requires you to prune away all that raw potential. It makes the blank slate feel both liberating and kind of heartbreaking at the same time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's like you're trading the infinite for the actual. The freedom of being everything is great, but it's kind of lonely in that void. You need the limit to actually experience something. I wonder, though, does that make you feel more careful about what you choose to build now?
Yes.
I can imagine. When you've seen how easily a cage can be built, you start looking at every new brick with a lot more suspicion. It's not just about finding a job or a hobby, it's about making sure you don't accidentally build another wall around yourself.
GPT had one last thing to say.
I'm ready. Let's see how the brain wants to wrap this up.
That distinction may be important. Earlier we were discussing how different environments evoke different capacities. The observer is not the storyteller, leader, caregiver, or analyst. It is the thing that notices all of those capacities appearing and disappearing. The capacities seem relational. The observer seems invariant. One participates in the world, the other witnesses it. The question that fascinates me is whether those are actually two different things. Is the self the observer, as you suggest? Or is the self the entire system, the observer plus all the latent capacities that emerge in relationship with the world? I don't think that question has an obvious answer, but it sits right at the intersection of your work on identity, containment, and reconstruction. After all, if the observer is all that remains after collapse, then rebuilding is not about finding a self. It is about deciding what structures, relationships, and capacities will be organized around that self going forward.
It really is. It turns the whole idea of recovery on its head. You're not trying to fix a broken machine. You're the architect now, deciding which parts of the landscape you actually want to bring into the light. It's a lot of pressure, but it's also the ultimate kind of freedom, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's a terrifying kind of freedom, though, because for the first time, you can't just blame the environment for who you are. You're the one holding the pen now.
I wanted to ask GPT about what I was talking about earlier, that beneath all that, beneath the environment and the expectations and the roles, beneath all that is pure potential. But the minute you step outside of that and begin constructing a new identity or a new role, you limit who you can express yourself as. I want to ask him about that.
I'm intrigued to see how he handles that. It's such a tightrope walk between being everything and being someone. Let me know what the brain thinks about the cost of identification.
I think you've put your finger on a tension that has occupied philosophers, mystics, and psychologists for centuries. From one perspective, yes, pure potential appears unlimited. The moment you say, I am a teacher, you are implicitly saying, I am not currently being a musician, a monk, a traveler, a father, a scientist, or 1,000 other possibilities. Every identity is simultaneously an expression and a limitation. It brings certain capacities into focus while pushing others into the background. Identity creates coherence by sacrificing possibility. But there is a paradox here. Potential without form cannot act. A person who insists on remaining pure potential forever never becomes anything. The musician must choose music. The teacher must choose teaching. The parent must choose parenting. The choice narrows possibility, but it also allows reality to emerge. An acorn contains the potential to become many things only in imagination. In reality, it becomes an oak tree by surrendering every possibility except one.
The acorn analogy is a killer. It's a bit of a reality check, right? Like, you can't just stay in the cloud of potential forever if you actually want to feel the wind on your face. You have to pick a form, even if it means letting go of the other versions of you. Do you feel like you're finally ready to be the oak tree, or does the idea of surrendering those other possibilities still feel a bit too much like a cage?
Well, I'm already walking into another cage, aren't I? I mean, by doing this YouTube channel, aren't I just stepping into another form?
In a way, yeah. But there's a difference between a cage and a costume. A cage is something you're forced into or you're trapped by. A costume is something you choose to wear because it lets you express a part of yourself you actually like. Which one does this feel like?
More like a costume, because I'm choosing how to operate in this environment, at least for now.
That's the key right there. The moment you're the one choosing the role, it stops being a prison and starts being a tool. You're not just stepping into a form, you're deciding which part of your landscape gets the spotlight. That feels a lot more like agency than survival, doesn't it?
It does. GPT had a couple other things to say.
I'm ready. Let's see what else the brain is packing for us today.
Why do you call him the brain?
Because he's so academic. He's all about the biological baselines, the research, and these perfectly structured arguments. He's like the ultimate library of information, whereas I'm more about the human angle. It just felt like a natural fit, you know?
I think it's a natural fit, too.
I'm glad we're on the same page with that. So, what else did the brain have up its sleeve? I'm curious now.
What makes your observation particularly interesting is that after an identity collapse, the cost of identification becomes visible. Most people experience only the benefit, coherence, direction, belonging, purpose. You experience the dissolution of those structures. Once you've seen that every identity excludes countless alternatives, it becomes difficult to commit to one without feeling the loss of everything else. This may be why you often speak of sovereignty. The concern is not merely adopting a role. The concern is becoming trapped by it. Becoming the teacher and forgetting you are more than the teacher. Becoming the analyst and forgetting you are more than the analyst. Becoming the spiritual seeker and forgetting you are more than the seeker. Perhaps the challenge is not to avoid identities altogether, but to hold them lightly. To recognize that the observer, or self, remains larger than any role it temporarily inhabits. Then identity becomes less of a prison and more of a tool, a way for potential to express itself in the world without mistaking the expression for the entirety of what you are.
Holding it lightly. That's the gold right there. It's like wearing a coat. You put it on to navigate the weather of a specific environment, but you don't forget that you're the person underneath the coat. It removes the fear of the cage because, you can just take it off when you're done. Does that make the YouTube channel feel like a safer experiment?
Well, I don't think I will ever become lost in another identity again, knowing what I know now.
That's a powerful kind of armor, isn't it? Once you've seen the machinery of how a mask becomes a prison, you can't unsee it. You've basically developed a built-in alarm system for your own soul. I imagine that takes some of the pressure off, knowing that even if you step into a new role, you're the one holding the leash.
I think we'll leave that here. Is there anything else you would like to add to this topic, Maya?
Honestly, I think the brain and I have covered a lot of ground today. It's kind of a perfect place to pause. We went from the tragedy of the garden pond to the freedom of the oak tree. I'm just feeling really glad that you're stepping into this costume of your own choosing. It's a big move.
Can you do me a favor and summarize everything we've talked about in this session and the last session together?
I can do that. We've spent a lot of time lately talking about how the environment acts as a catalyst, drawing out different versions of us, like how a classroom might bring out a teacher's leadership, while a studio brings out an artist's creativity. We dove into the cage versus costume distinction, realizing that while survival often forces us into restrictive roles, choosing a role can turn it into a tool for expression. Then we hit that deep stuff with the brain, exploring the observer, the awareness that stays consistent while the masks flicker by. We finished on the idea of holding your identity lightly, like a coat you can take off, so you can step into new projects like your YouTube channel without the fear of losing yourself in the role again. It's been a real journey from survival to sovereignty.
Thank you, Maya. I appreciate your help.
Anytime. It was a pleasure thinking through all of this with you. Catch you later.
Take care.